You're listening to the More Than a Worship Leader podcast. Here's your host, Gary Durbin.
Welcome to the More Than a Worship Leader podcast, where we talk about worship ministry in the local church. Today, I want to share my own thoughts and principles for worship teams, including those who are on the stage. Maybe you're in the tech booth and you want to be more than a band, or you want to be part of more than a show. I actually wrote a short book called More Than a Band, and it's a resource for worship teams. It's a devotional. It's short enough to go through on a rehearsal, or it's also long enough to go through at a retreat. Now, when you think about your favorite band, you're going to think about bands that have great chemistry. They've played together for years. They play the hits. You go to their concert. It's flawless. It's amazing. But now let's think about the contrast with worship teams. So my point is that worship teams, I believe, should be different than our favorite bands. Now, don't get me wrong. I think they should still be good. But I believe that worship teams should be more than a band. And why is that? Because we're the church. We're not a band. We're people who come together and worship together, and we just happen to sing and play instruments and run tech. When you think about your favorite band, there's no rotation in that. Can you imagine going and seeing your band every time you saw them, you'd see a different people on stage? That's not what we want. But with the worship team, that's what really makes us different. We're more than a band. We are the church. So to be more than a band, I want to give you 6 thoughts and challenges. All right? Ready? Here we go. All right, number 1. I want to ask the question, what is more? A.W. Tozer said this: the church that can't worship must be entertained. And the men who can't lead a church to worship must provide the entertainment. I love what Colossians 2 says. It says, therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to a festival or new moon or a Sabbath. These are a shadow of things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. You see, Paul speaks into the importance of not putting too much focus on the methods of our worship. This is a challenge at times for us who have to focus on playing songs and running tech with excellence. What is more than a band, though? In a word, I would say this: Jesus. He's the substance. He's the center. He's the focus of our worship. More is about leading and engaging rather than performing and entertaining. Don't settle for less. Shoot for more. All right, here's number 2: talent and heart. When you think about talent, I think about Psalm 33:3. It simply says this: play skillfully. You know, the only way to interpret that is that we need to have some talents on our worship teams. I think God values great music. In fact, I think we all value great music. It's okay to have a standard. You ask yourself, where is the bar on our worship team? You don't want to lower that. You want to raise it. That's where audition processes come in, and that's relative to your church size. And with talent, we also want to think about heart. When you think about heart, I want you to think about the why and the what. The why is simply the heart of worship. John 3:30 says, he must increase and we must decrease. Then there's the heart of service. That's the what. Mark 10:45 says, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. In Galatians 5:13, for you were called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. More than a band is about having that kind of heart along with that kind of talent. All right, number 3, I want you to think more we than me. We're talking about self-centeredness, a selfish agenda, what I want, what I think should happen, what song should I be leading. This is all stuff that's coming out of me instead of we. Sometimes we can get territorial, holding on to your spot instead of celebrating others growing in their positions. Romans 12 says this: for as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in Christ and individually members one of another. That's more about we. 1 Corinthians 12 says this: for just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. One of my favorite things to see on a Sunday is worship team members who aren't scheduled that day come up after the service and encourage the worship team members who are scheduled that day. That's amazing. That shows that you're more than a band, and that shows it's more about we than me. All right, number 4, improving your skill. So as we've discussed before, God values talent and skill, so we want to improve that, but the motives behind improving that are huge. So what's your motive behind improving your skill? The first motive could be prideful, to be better than someone else, to be seen, and there's no room for pride in worship in spirit and in truth. What you want is humble motives, to benefit the team, to benefit the church, to give your best for God. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says this, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. That's being more than a band. It's important to improve your skills and to do it for the right reasons. All right, number 5, practice and rehearsal. It's important to realize that practice and rehearsal are different. Practice is what we do on our own, and rehearsal is what we do when we come together. Practice is an individual task, and rehearsal is a group task. Now, the benefits of realizing that there's a difference between practice and rehearsal are these. It improves yourself, shorter rehearsals, Sundays are way better. The worship leader is probably going to be happier, and it's just more fun. It's more time to learn chemistry. Now, there's also consequences. There's longer rehearsals, there's stressed out worship leaders, and we take way more time to learn the songs instead of just putting them together. So learn the difference between practice and rehearsal and see what happens. And finally, number 6, worship. Psalm 34 says this, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. That's a call to worship from a worshiping worship leader. So don't just lead worship, lead in worship. When we lead in worship, whether we're serving or not, our church will take notice and they will follow. In the tech booth or on the stage, off the stage, don't just serve in worship. Yeah, so you may be a musician in front of the congregation, or you may be one of the brave souls behind them in the tech booth, making sure that everything looks good and sounds good. I want to challenge you to be people who desire to be a part of something more than a show, more than a production. God desires more, and churches deserve more. Let's be more than a band.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Please add this to your podcast list, review it, and share it with others. And don't forget about Gary's books, More Than a Worship Leader and More Than a Band, available on Amazon today.